Good evening, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 183. And my apologies that we are about 7 minutes late. I'm not usually late and gay, but just on this occasion. Excuse me while I do my boomer stuff.
So, slow news week.
Yeah, not quite, but yeah. Where are we? Here we go.
I'm still not really sure what we should even talk about with this stuff. It's
all right.
It's a bit. I mean, is there really anything to really cover? Everything's kind of happened. Give a little bit of commentary.
All right, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Boomer stuff. Well, I mean, two-tier policing is one thing that strikes me, but also Adam, and I think that's a legitimate question now. I was talking to Morgoth on Twitter, and Morgoth was saying to me in DMs that he was very suspicious about who was pushing this at one stage, but it now seems to be fairly genuine. I don't know what you think, mate.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a. I know people on our side of things like to push and look for like the group or the organization or the plan behind stuff, but I mean, I think what we're looking at here is this like this sort of tornado. You've got the disinfo accounts. Like AA did that video, didn't he? And he kind of went off on the disinfo stuff, and I think a lot of people were a bit irked that he had to be a contrarian, like of all the times. But
yeah, I agree.
But he is kind of right though. Like there was like, I mean, the amount I had people in my office going like, oh, it's a cover up. He's a Muslim, and it's like, can't we just accept that he's just a stabby black? Like, is that really so hard for people to believe? And it's and then there was this thing where people were trying to say, I saw one group of people, this was admittedly a very small thing, but they were trying to say that he was a boat migrant, and it was sort of like a cover up by saying that he was born here, which again, like, why does it matter? Like, I thought we could actually finally move past this whole being British.
Then I heard he was the son of Rwandan immigrants. I heard that.
Yes, that's the true one, I think, as far as I can work out. And onto that as well, there seems to be some implication that either his father or someone on the male side of the family seems to be some sort of Hutu commander going back to the Rwandan genocide. But that is very neither here nor there. It's I'm not sure if we'll ever get an answer on that.
Well, I'm not a magic soil believer, Alvin, and I'm sure you're not either.
No.
So as far as I'm concerned, he wasn't English. I mean, no. I don't care if you were born here, but if both your parents came from somewhere else, you're not.
Well,
that's my view.
I had a Scottish guy today trying to have a go at me and someone else on Twitter. There was an Australian guy that was like, these people shouldn't be in Britain or in Europe, full stop. And this Scottish guy came in and he's like, oh, you're in Australia. You should leave Australia. It's, essentially it's stolen land. And I sort of took into a task on this. And I'm like, well, Australia was built by Australians, white Anglos.
Yep.
And I got quote tweeted by population. Yeah, I got quote tweeted by some group, and they were like, "Oh, you think the Abos were here before the Aborigines were here before the white
And
people."
never built anything more than a
Yeah, I
mud
was
hut
like,
in like
I
several
posted a
thousand years.
picture.
But
I posted a picture of is it Goldman's courthouse? Is that the name of the town, Goldman? It's like based on Roman architecture. It's a very beautiful building. And I posted that up, and I was like, no Abo could conceive of this.
Listen, the Aboriginals were here for thousands of years, and I know Australian, and I live in Australia at the moment, even though I'm an Englishman. No Aboriginal built anything in Australia beyond a mud hut until the British arrived.
20,000 years, they built a noisy stick.
Yeah, exactly. And
I
mean, did they have some cool things like boomerangs and bark canoes and stuff like that? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But they didn't build anything. They just couldn't. They didn't have the wheel. They didn't have writing. Australia was built originally by Anglo-Celtic people who came here after Captain Cook discovered the damn place. So
and I pointed out to this person, I'm like, you cannot. I mean, it's absurd to sit there and say that like this guy is as Welsh as any Welshman simply because of where he's born, but Australians are living, or Australians don't have a right to be an Australian.
It's just a ridiculous left-wing argument. Right? It really is. Like the left wing wouldn't have any standards at all if they didn't have double standards,
Yeah.
I mean, I've lived in Australia since 2000 when I moved here from South Africa because I fell in love with an Australian girl, believe it or not. And I don't consider myself an Australian. I wouldn't insult Australians by saying, "Oh yeah, I'm an Aussie," because I'm not. I'm an Englishman who lives in Australia.
Yeah, but Australia's as far as I could tell from meeting quite a few Australians now, Australia's are still very much Anglos. Like,
so. No, absolutely. The core population of Australia remains Anglo-Celtic, just as it does in Canada and New Zealand, and even to a limited degree in the USA. So Could I just say one thing, guys, before we move on to more political subjects, and before I introduce Mitch, I'd just like to say, if you look in the description of the stream, people, this is called the Jasper the Dog Memorial Stream. My very good friend Aubrey, who's in the chat, her dearly beloved canine mate, Jasper, died yesterday. And he was almost 17, which is a great age for a dog. And he wasn't a little dog either. He was mixed breed, but I think he was probably Beagle, German Shepherd, something like that. So he wasn't a little dog, but almost 17 years old. And as far as I'm concerned, if dogs don't go to heaven, the rest of us have got no chance. And people may remember, like quite a while ago now, Jasper actually was on the stream, and he sang a doggo version of Happy Birthday. So and that's why we were a bit late this evening, because I was out drinking with some ex-military mates of mine, and it was only when I got home at like 1 o'clock in the morning for me that I discovered that poor Jasper had passed away. And so commiserations to Aubrey, and R.I.P. Jasper. Anyway, that's my little personal bit of information. Mitch, how you going, mate?
Normally I'd say same old, but the past events of a few days have been quite very white pilling, to say the least.
Yeah, yep. I was just, in case you didn't hear, Mitch, I was saying to Adam before we started that I was talking to Morgoth in DMs on Twitter, on X, and he is saying the same thing. He was saying that obviously initially he was very suspicious about who was pushing this, but now he thinks that maybe it's a real thing.
Yeah, I just think who was it who said like something about the patient fury of the angler or something like that? I can't remember the quote, but basically we're slow to anger, but once we're basically like the Ents from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, you often get people quoting the Kipling poem, don't you?
Yeah. I don't know if that's where the quote is from, but I'm not fully sure. It's a bit because it's a bit of a Saxon, but I can't remember where the quote came from. Probably someone like
I think it is. I think it's the Rudyard Kipling poem, which was actually aimed at the Germans, which I think is a bit foolish. But so one thing I'm not very. I don't think Kipling was right about that, and I'm a huge Kipling fan, as you guys know. So whatever. But yeah, it was aimed at that. I don't know. I just think that maybe people have just had enough. There was no popularity for Labour winning the election. Labour didn't win it; the Conservatives lost it. The so-called, in air quotes, Conservatives lost it, and they became government by default with not all that many votes. Really, I mean, it was under 10 million votes, I think, wasn't it? I think it was under 10 million votes that the Labour Party got, which is really
fewer votes than Corbyn. Yeah, Corbyn had more of a mandate to do what he wanted.
Corbyn got more votes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like you've got one of the main things that kind of tells you this is not astroturf or this is not inorganic is the fact that you've got the Unionists and the Republicans on the same side because
I've seen that in Northern Ireland. People standing there in Northern Ireland, and I did 2 tours with the British Army in Northern Ireland during the Troubles. All right, so it's almost inconceivable to me that in Northern Ireland, and you've got people standing with Irish Republican tricolors and with like Ulster and English flags, for God's sake. Almost inconceivable that would happen.
Yeah, I mean, you got to credit Starmer. He's brought the 2 sides together. You got to credit Starmer for
that. Yeah, true.
Yeah,
true.
Or as
I mean, look, I'd love to see it all the time, mate. I'd love to see it all the time. I am not one of these people who always slags off the Irish, and I couldn't be even if I wanted to be because my mother came from Southern Ireland. So I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I was. So yeah, I'd love to see Unionists and Republicans standing together against the invaders, just as I'd like to see Irish guys and British guys standing together against the invaders. I just think that's a really good thing. Really good.
Yeah, and it's of course all the Shinners and all those I said like the Sinn Féin types, they're all literally crapping bricks at the sight of that. They're all just seething online about it. But that was quite a treasure trove.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, because the Irish people realizing that Brits out, Somalians in is not actually a good thing. The Marxist leadership of Sinn Féin don't like that at all. They really don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I forget what the band is. It was something like the village of Coolock, which is like this little village of like 300 people, and they're trying to bring in like 500 migrants into that little town. So like there was also a banner talking about that, and it's just like there's like our enemies are so egregious now that they've just united people who have been fighting each other for the past 400 years just in sheer evil of how sheer evil they are. Well, that's quite an accomplishment.
Well, we're all facing the same invasion, Mitch. We're all facing the same invasion now. You know.
Yeah.
Even Australia is. It's not as bad as Britain, but it's got far too much mass immigration. You know, and of course Britain, a bit like when you look at Australia, a bit like when you look at Ireland or Scotland or Wales, the population is not that huge, so to overrun it wouldn't take a lot, relatively speaking.
Yeah, apparently I'm trying to load up a blue picture of it saying Keir Starmer's approval ratings have completely collapsed in the face of us, because apparently he's saying that as of next week he's going to go on a holiday, and you know what's funny? So because I remember reading a book earlier this year about Gorbachev during the 1991 coup attempt, and what happened was Gorbachev went on holiday, and then once he was out the city and in Crimea, I think he was holidaying in, the army made their move and all of the Soviet hardliners. So can you just imagine, like, while Keir Starmer's out on his hollybobs, everything just kicks off into like Euromaidan kind of.
We could hope. Although, of course, this channel in no way supports any sort of violence because we're on YouTube. So
no, we just want we want a velvet revolution. We want it to be 100% peaceful.
100% peaceful. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think. What's your opinion, Mitch, of this? Because I was talking to Alman about this. What's your opinion of this dude who killed those three tiny, poor little girls? He's not English, as far as I'm concerned. He's not English. I don't care if he was born here. His parents were from Rwanda, weren't they?
Yeah, pretty sure it was a Hutu, and apparently he was on the police radar because he brandished a knife in school, and he said that he wants to see a genocide in Britain to sort out the real problems.
Yeah, so he wanted to copy what happened in his own real country of Rwanda in East Africa.
Yeah, pretty much. And the thing is, I mean, and as I said, like the main scummy thing we've all noticed is the fact that the media have tried to be using photos of him from like 5 years ago when he was a 12-year-old, saying, "Oh, look at this," you know, "Oh, he wants to play as Doctor Who," and I'm just there thinking,
they wouldn't have done that if he was a white guy, though, Mitch, would they? If he had been a white guy, they would have plastered him all over the mainstream media, and they no doubt would have accused him of being far right.
Yeah, I'll keep hearing to answer all this. I keep hearing about AI. I mean, I can't actually tell at this point. It's really deceiving at this point. I can't even tell if AI or not. Normally, I'd be able to tell.
Some of the pictures I've seen did look very like AI to me, I've got to say. And by the way, guys, we're not talking about AI who often comes on this channel. We're talking about artificial intelligence. Okay? But
that's just how evil the media have been, especially the Daily Mail, which all these shitlibs who are complaining about us always say is a right-wing media. Well, what's that? Right. Well, this right-wing media is trying to rehabilitate a kiddie murderer. So.
Oh yeah, they literally call it the Daily Hail, which is so cringe.
Look, the Daily Mail, when I was a young man, and I'm an old bastard, of course, but when I was a young man, it actually was a fairly right-wing newspaper. It hasn't been for years. I mean,
last time it was a right-wing newspaper was like the 1930s, probably.
Yeah.
I was probably like Lord Rothermere.
Mate, honestly, Mitch, is there a right-wing newspaper in Britain anymore? Even the Telegraph these days is not very right-wing as far as I'm concerned.
There has been a cool resurgence in... there has been a nice resurgence in sort of like dissident mags, like monthly or quarterly magazines, but no newspaper. The Daily Mail is always the one that's kind of struck me as really weird because it essentially appeals to like the red wall voter. So it slams like the Tories on things like immigration,
Which it
but
should.
never says anything about like the immigration policies of Labour, and will instead just talk about like NHS or welfare or economic stuff. It's a very bizarre position that paper's managed to hold itself in for decades at this point. But there's no actual right-wing newspaper.
No, I mean, like when I was a young bloke in say, the 1980s, so that's such a long time. It's probably before certainly before you guys, and before probably most of our people in the audience were born. The Daily Mail was a fairly right-wing newspaper, but these days it just puzzles me. It seems to like get by on loads of pictures of semi-naked celebrities and shit like that,
Yeah, basically. That's all it is now.
I do get it because, when I was a young man, we had the Sun newspaper, which was also fairly right-wing, but more working class. It was like the opposition to the Daily Mirror back then. And it had page-free girls, who were topless and stuff like that. But it was still a pretty right-wing newspaper. But these days, I look at the British mainstream media press, and there just isn't a right-wing newspaper anymore.
No, it's like
Times used to be fairly right-wing, believe it or not.
Well, I mean, even like in 1969, you had Jacob Rees-Mogg's father slagging off Enoch Powell. So even in the 1960s, you didn't really have. Even like the right-wing newspapers, quote unquote, was still slagging off someone like Enoch Powell for blowing the whistle on mass migration. So, this isn't just like a recent phenomenon of like the last 25 years or something. This has been in like right-wing media has been completely captured since 1960s, the very latest. So.
Yeah. I mean, this brings us on to like various other topics. Like, I suppose we could talk about Carl Benjamin a little bit from the Lotus Eaters, of course. The former Sargon.
Do we have to?
Not
Seriously,
much, because not much, Adam, because I'm not really into punching right. But I'm
kind of open to punching right. He's been fucking. Like, I pay for Lotus Eaters subscription. I do watch their content. I'm very supportive of what they do, but he's been cringe basically since the 29th. Basically this entire last week.
Thank you, mate. That's what I wanted to say. I'm glad you agree with me, because that's what I thought.
The guy started off his target audience, and then sorry.
Hang on, Mitch. I'll come back to you in a sec, mate. Carl Benjamin of the Lotus Eaters started off by backing the Tommy Robinson march. I thought that was a bit cringe because, I don't know, we all in this sphere, and probably most of our audience, know enough of the backstory of Tommy Robinson these days to know that he is at least, shall we say, a bit suspicious with his Zionist links. And I don't understand why Carl Benjamin was backing that for a start. And I noticed that AA had one of his oppos from the Lotus Eaters on his stream last week, I think, that he put out on Saturday because he was desperate to get back into the news cycle. And the bloke refused to comment on it. He said, I can't say anything about Carl Benjamin supporting Tommy Robinson, because if I did, I'll get into trouble. So, yeah, what do you guys think of that one, Mitch?
Mitch, you go first.
Well, yeah, he's just he's a complete coward in the sense that he's been the average protester going out right now the sort of rhetoric they're saying is what Sargon's been saying for years about two-tier policing, about how anti-white things are, how Labour are the party of grooming gangs and blah blah blah. And I'm thinking, and he'll also say stuff like, "Oh well, voting and protesting peacefully, like what he did with Tommy Robinson, doesn't really change anything." But then when it escalates to this, and the establishment actually starts listening to us for a change, because now you're seeing police stations getting burnt down in Sunderland. Not that I support it, but the fact is, this is the way the government works. Carl Benjamin is now all of a sudden he has some sort of conscience, quote unquote. All of a sudden he has to disavow these people, and he has to just act like a spineless worm about it. And I was thinking, yeah, I don't really, he's happy to sow the seeds, but not willing to reap what comes after. So, and hence he disavows a lot of this protesting, and that's why I can't be arsed with him. Never mind the fact that you're also like he blocks people all the damn time for calling him "you could rape joke man," or or
you got blocked, didn't you, Mitch? You got blocked by Sargon of Akkad.
Yeah, I was mocking him because the thing was, he was saying, "Well, Nigel Farage, why aren't you associating with Tommy Robinson?" And I'm sort of thinking, why would Nigel Farage want to taint his movement with you? Yep. And I got blocked for saying that, and I thought, the guy's also acting a bit like a rat. He's wanted to scurry his way into reform. And I was sort of thinking, he's just going to screw it all up like he did with UKIP.
I don't think Farage will have him, and I think Farage is right, because like that schoolboy joke that Carl Benjamin made when he was in his 30s, by the way, if he'd have made that joke when he was, I don't know, 19, 20, I would have said, yeah, not really much of a big deal. But he made that joke when he was well into his 30s, when he was talking about that not very attractive Labour MP. I wouldn't touch that Labour MP with a 10-foot steel-tip barge pole, but I don't need to make the joke that Carl Benjamin made, which is schoolboy, in my opinion. It's the sort of thing when you were about 15, you might have said to your mates, and you would have all titters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of also the problem with having a prominent guy in your movement that has possibly hundreds of hours of streams, late night sort of what was it, blood sport style streams, under all sorts of different moods, and just so much stuff that could be taken out of context or in whatever way. So in a way he kind of ends up being a bit of a compromise figure in that light. But all that aside, but basically everything Mitch pointed out, it was also just that I don't know. Sometimes I find the DR, as people call it, can be a bit like, protests are cringe or protests are based, and they like if you listen to like Charles Hayward, for example, the Worthy House guy, obviously American, but I do rate his take on things, and he points out, he says, like, ultimately there will come a time where you do need a protest. You're going to have, like, I think he brings up like the Texas governor on the whole border crisis in America, and he's like, eventually it's going to come a time where you've got like the army's been deployed, or federal agents of some description have been deployed to Texas, and he brings up the National Guard to face off, and you're going to have essentially people in a town square that are going to have to pick a side. And this is where the sort of counter elite thing comes down to. Eventually you can sit there and you can be high-minded and talk about, all these intellectual ideas like countercultures and vanguardism and rogue elites, but ultimately it comes down to getting a large enough group of the common man in the street who are willing to take action, to take action in your side at that moment of decision. And like, that's not what this is, obviously. And I think we all want to, a lot of us, I would imagine, kind of like to have a bit of a wry smile at, like, the odd police station burning, although apparently that was actually a citizens advice bureau that just happened to be right next to the police station. And the police getting made to run away and stuff like that. But yeah, just he spent all this time attending these like Tommy Tard rallies and doing all this crap, and then he comes out and he's like, oh, don't attend any protests. That wouldn't work in your favor. And it's like, seriously, like now,
Yep.
if you're gonna commit to it, like actually fucking well commit to it. Or at least play it smart, but this whole sort of like duck and cover
I
thing
think you've
is
always got to play it smart. But look, I
Mm.
mean, as I said on the Discord earlier in the week, the Mackhams from Sunderland, like Mackhams is the nickname for the British people who come from Sunderland, and they're quite similar to the Geordies from Newcastle, and one of my best mates when I was in South Africa was a Mackham. He was subsequently murdered by black African guys, but that's pretty common over there, sadly. But yeah, they're good blokes, and one of the backbones of the old British Armed Forces. When the British Armed Forces were still the British Armed Forces, not like they are today. They were one of the backbones of that.
Yeah.
They're good guys as far as I'm concerned. And when those guys have had enough, in a way, that's a good thing from our point of view. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, Poods in chat said, I can't tell if these protests are a good or a bad thing. That is a tough one to answer. A lot of people are saying they're bad. I think if you're not involved, they're a good thing. I think if you are involved, they're a very bad thing. I think a lot of people are going to have their lives ruined over these things. I think they've announced that they're going to have the courts in Liverpool running 24/7. I might need to check that, but there is a town where they're going to be basically running the courts 24/7, to basically make a conveyor belt for arrests that they're going to be making.
Well, look, as I say, Adam, and I was talking to Morgoth about this, and Morgoth said to me that he was dubious about who's pushing this, as you should be, of course. But I think he's becoming increasingly convinced that it's more real and not being fabricated. It's not being pushed by bad people.
Yeah,
it's just happening. And incidentally, in case anyone knows, I certainly did send Morgoth an invite on Twitter. But Morgoth comes on streams when he feels like it. So there you go. I think there is a genuineness about this, particularly because it's been so widespread. It's not in one or two towns. And you have had a lot of people turning around and saying, "Oh, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it," and people, maybe a lot of ordinary, I hate to use this word because it's a bit insulting, but like in air quotes, normies are starting to have had enough,
Well, yeah, to an extent. I mean, a lot of them are just still going with the media line, which is that these are far right thugs. And of course, they're doing a lot of the same playbook stuff. So like they're having to reinvigorate the corpse of the EDL, so they have something to point to as like a boogeyman pulling the strings. Because of course, like when I got into the right, BMP was still around, but it was dying. I think, funny enough, at that point, its membership numbers were actually still going up, but internally it was so compromised, it was going to implode basically any month. So by the time I really started to get into like what it would take to actually create right-wing action, it was already you're already just like sweeping through the sort of ash and dusty floor looking for little tidbits and
would
little
would you be talking about what era around 2010, that sort of thing?
Yes, yeah, basically.
So basically, when some people in the BMP decided they were going to destroy Jonathan Bowden.
Yeah, basically about that time. And sort of by the time I
Yeah.
was trying to organise, the
That's what
BNP
you
had
meant.
basically imploded. And you can see this now, like the EDL's gone. Like a lot of this is just like local Facebook and WhatsApp groups. There's no sort of like national network. A lot of these people are bouncing off each other. If it had been organised, you probably would have seen all these protests happening in different places at the same time. But of course, what we're actually seeing is like one town's doing something big, and then within 3 days, something's being organised elsewhere.
It strikes me, Armin, that it's a little bit like when the big protests were going off about the lockdowns. Like we all know Lady of Shalott because she's on our Discord. And Lady of Shalott was saying that the initial lockdown protests in Australia, where it was longer than anywhere else in the whole wide world, they were being organised on Facebook, and eventually the cops started monitoring those and arresting people who were just posting on Facebook, for God's sake. But that's how that started, because as people have said in the chat, Facebook's a very normie place to post. I mean, I've never been on Facebook in my life, but then I'm non-normie, so
yeah, Facebook's not really where it's at anymore. But it's like, on one hand, the fact that they're protesting and the government can do this whole boogeyman thing kind of plays into already existing left-wing narratives where they actually think that like ground up revolutionary action is how change happens, and therefore this is right-wingers trying to exact evil change. Whereas obviously it does nothing in the long run. You need some organization behind it. The thing is, a lot of people are saying like, oh, they're using this to like as an excuse to like clamp down. Like they were going to turn the screw anyway. To be honest, a lot of the things that Keir Starmer's announced in terms of like an integrated police bureaucracy for like national organization, that was stuff that already informally existed. It's now just being formalized. So I'm not really, and like they're going to come down on like a lot of sort of more right-wing stuff, and we might see the online safety bill get revived, but like this was all just stuff we were prepared to deal with anyway. They were going to find ways to bring it in. Blair's ID card's going to come up in some way, in this term. We know that's on the bingo card, right? Everyone's hoping for that.
Oh, look, Adam, and anyone who thought that Sir Keir Starmer somehow or another was going to be, not extreme left wing and not an enemy of the real Anglo-Celtic British people, I think they were very, very foolish, including some quite prominent people, shall we say, in the DR. I think their ideas were ridiculous, quite frankly.
Well, like a certain brown academic.
Someone who absolutely adores the vile traitor Tony Blair. I want to just bring AI into the discussion because he's joined us. AI, what do you think about this stuff, mate?
Hello, Iron Duke. Well, I was going to say, what can I say? Gas the bikes, race car now. That's basically what I'm.
Yeah.
I mean, in all seriousness, it's kind of it. I'm not surprised that this has happened. One thing that I have noticed is that initially, like in Southport, I saw clips going around. I think Morgoth shared it, where you had civnats up there that tried to capitalize on this to try and contain it, and it was like this Asian civnat, and he was basically like near enough lynch, had to be rescued by the police, and he was so it was like total civnat death was and I was and that was because I was sort of like most people, I just thought, oh, this was like a containment op, and then I saw that, and it was it rekindled a bit of something within me. But I mean, obviously, for YouTube's sake, I condemn all violence. I'm a
Yep.
pacifist at heart.
Totally.
I'm the most peace-loving person going. But at the same time, I think one thing that's been amazing. I've actually been watching, sort of binge watching over the last few days, like some Adam Curtis on documentaries on New Labour and the way that New Labour, and there was a section, I believe, where he looked at and I don't know if any of you remember I remember it vaguely, the riots in Bradford, I think in 2000, 2001. Do you remember those ones roughly?
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing that you had was that because back then the Blair machine was able to spin really strong media framing and also use quite heavy force techniques on both sides to basically shut it down at both ends, but mainly of course the white patriot side in particular. I mean, but today what you have is a you have a police force and I know people saying all these different measures that he's going to introduce, but I'm just seeing on the ground. I just don't see that sort of capability isn't present in 2024. I don't think at large the police are capable of what I fear is yet to come. I mean, today I've been seeing clips on off and on again. I've sort of been ignoring it because, I don't want to get sort of. I want to give it like a bit of distance of time to look back through, because there's a lot of slop accounts which have been putting out a lot of fake information, a lot of fake clips, and so I'm sort of giving it a few days rest period before I can see what's going on. But from what I can see, you've got now, if to be believed, Muslim, certain like areas of what was it in Stoke and such, where you have mosques which are now being used for storing weapons. Now I don't know if that is true. That's what the claim
I've
is.
heard that's been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that for a fact, but I've heard that's been going on for a very long time
Yeah.
now.
And the weapons in question have been like machetes and things that have been it was Blackburn. I think it was Stoke-on-Trent and Blackburn in particular, where you've had like these mobs of Muslims going around, quote unquote protecting the neighborhood but armed with machetes and hunting down, trying to hunt down British people. That's what's been going out there. As I say, I don't know if it's entirely true. I'm just going by what clips have been said, and also what a police liaison officer was saying.
I do think it's a bit funny, AI, that when you get immigrant riots, which of course have been common in the UK for a long time now, you get a softly approach from the British police. Whereas if it's white, Anglo-Celtic, indigenous Britons who are doing this, then you get the riot squad and the police dogs and everything else in it.
Yeah.
I do think that's a bit strange.
Yeah, and the other strange thing, and I've noticed this on Twitter, because I'm really trying to get my head around it, is that the media tactic by the Labour government, or the regime's tactic, is they're saying that the people involved in the riots, the white patriot side, aren't locals to said area, and they just came in from out somewhere else. They don't say wherever
always
else.
look like they were to me, mate. I mean, I can't absolutely tell, but like I've watched the same stuff that you have and everyone has.
Yeah.
Mostly not from the mainstream media, of course, and they look like local lads to me for the most part.
Well, Andrew, we've had like the mayor of Liverpool, the metro mayor of the northeast. You've had the MPs from Newcastle, and all of them and councillors from Blackburn and Stoke-on-Trent, and MPs from Stoke-on-Trent, all across the board, are all saying that none of these people are local to the area. So one can only assume that they're coming through the wardrobe from Narnia, because if they're all fundamentally, I mean that. So, yeah. But this is something that's really bizarre, because number one, this claim, it's obviously self-evidently not true. It's just self-evidently not true. The South End riots, you had people come. There was clips of just people, standing in their doorways in their homes, either joining in, filming it, or just watching it, or being part of it in some capacity. It's quite clear that this is not, and I think the reason why this has been used is, as Ataman said, this is they've sort of like resurrected the zombie Zionistic corpse of the EDL from over 10 years ago now. And of course, part of the EDL back in the day did used to travel. That it was known they did travel from town to town and for various demonstrations with other local groups.
Can I just AI? Can I just say, like Captain Smith in the chat is saying, people may have gone from Southport to Liverpool. Well, fine, because Southport's on the edge of Liverpool anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very close.
It's pretty much a suburb of Liverpool.
The difference in distance between like Liverpool and Southport is not that difference to the distance between Southport and Banks, where the stabber came from.
Thank you, Armin. Thank you. I mean, it's like Southend. Like because I was born in London, like in the era when I grew up, Londoners used to go to Southend for a day trip because it was one of the quickest places at the seaside you could get to, So it would be like
it's all part
saying,
of
there were people from London in Southend. Well, what a surprise, It's like, it's not a big deal.
Well, as I said, the only person from the south who was up there was the Sivnat who got called the P word and was sort of like booted out, physically manhandled out of the crowd. So yeah, as I say, I think that particular clip is what got Morgoth and Steve Laws and people like that sort of into it, because they were sort of not very into it. They thought this was like and I think this is quite interesting. Is there are elements in the north, particularly in the north, I don't think, maybe with the exception of maybe in Liverpool today and maybe a few ones, but on the whole, I don't think there's much TR coordination. I think it's more. I think it is more just mob reaction, and also as I stated on Twitter a few days ago, when this was all
could we say it was more not mob reaction, but like natural
community reaction,
patriot reaction,
or a community reaction, because this is the thing. As I pointed out a few days ago in the tweet, it wasn't, and this is something that a lot of the lefties were sort of gloaty about, saying, "Oh, these stupid right wingers, he was a Rwandan, he wasn't a Muslim, he wasn't anything. He was born in Cardiff. He's as Welsh as you or me, or what,
you had all these family.
Yeah.
You look at his family.
Yeah, but the reality is, yes, that stabbing, the horror of that incident, that murders that took place, was the catalyst, because you've had decades in places like Sunderland, in parts of Yorkshire and Northumberland, of grooming gangs
all over the country, mate.
Yes,
all over. Not like all over the country. Like even like as far south as Oxford, for example.
Yeah,
and no doubt in London, because
London. But the reason why I single out Yorkshire and the North as a general is because that's the I mean, that's sort of like the more notable case of it. But you've had like organized, I would say almost like a paramilitarized community of Muslims in that area who have organized and have gotten away with carte blanche for decades, absolute decades. And this is this is something that I think the BNP back in the day were fighting against and pointing out, and that has been building up and building up, and this is the reaction that you've got now, and I mean all these riots that you see today, and people in chat saying voice to the unheard. Well, of course I'm a pacifist. I don't believe in violence, but I would say that the riots were entirely at the helm and the responsibility of the Labour government, not just because it's Labour controlled councils mainly in those areas. I mean, yes, it's been switching, some areas been switching Conservative Labour, but on the whole it's been controlled by it's fundamentally the policies of 30 years of both Labour and Conservative, particularly Labour in those areas, who have allowed this sort of culture and to foster and promoting really, really horrific anti-white civilizational messaging.
100%, mate. 100%. Before I ask Adam and Mitch to comment on this stuff, before you came on, we were talking about this scum who killed those 3 little girls. And, there have been people trying to claim he was English when both his parents come from Rwanda in West Africa, where, of course, there was the famous, infamous genocide. I don't think you're a believer in magic soil, are you, AI?
Well, no, this is absolute some brain rot, Americanized crap. That the idea is that a place where you're born is then determining of your genetic lineage and destiny. I mean, it's complete nonsense. I mean, that's why we don't refer to Rudyard Kipling as an Indian, for God's sake.
100%, 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah. Throughout all human history, apart from the batshit crazy, post World War II world that we've been living in and subjected to, a people and a group is just that. Your nation is connected to a people, which is distinct, and anything outside of that is just exclusive. But so we're not this propositional free-for-all melting pot of cultures. No matter how many dipshit, historically illiterate fuckheads and retards claim that we were invaded by the Romans and the Saxons and the Vikings, and it's like, get the fuck out of that, you absolute clueless boomer history retard, fucking wank dog shit fuckhead.
On that note, though, it is an imported Americanism, because I was actually quite shocked over the last sort of 5 days at how many of these people actually do just think that being born here it instantly gives you British citizenship. As if like anchor babies in America, and they're genuinely like they actually try to claim that you've like faked screenshots that you've taken from the government site that says that if neither of your parents are British, you don't automatically get British citizenship. You still have to apply for it, even if you're born here.
Adam, and it was like I was saying earlier. I lived in Australia for almost a quarter of a century. Right, it will be a quarter of a century this year, and I would never have the nerve to claim I was an Australian. I'm not. I'm an Englishman who lives in Australia.
Yeah, to be fair, I think in my my base future, I think I would like it if all the Anglosphere countries had like a sort of integrated
100%.
citizenship policy.
Totally
for
agree,
Anglos.
Mitch. Sorry, Adam, and I totally agree. Yep, I agree with that. But it still doesn't make me an Aussie, like a true blue Aussie is someone like Chris Gard or Magnus Furious or, one of those guys who were actually born here in Australia.
I'm Duke. I mean, just maybe people don't know, but I wasn't born in the UK. I was born in the Middle East.
Army-based baby,
military family or diplomatic family, maybe AI something like that?
Diplomatic.
Oh, I was going to say, I thought you were about
Yeah.
to screw over your pacifist credentials. Then I was going to be like, aha, he's in the blood.
Perfectly. It's perfectly reasonable for an Englishman or a Briton, if they're Scottish or whatever, to be born overseas. It's perfectly reasonable if both your parents are British, but you were in the military or the diplomatic corps. Then yeah, that's fine. I mean, it was like I was saying, Rudyard Kipling was born in India, but he definitely wasn't a bloody Indian, you know.
Yeah. Someone in my office was a German army base brat. A British army base in Germany brat. And yeah, they were saying to me, they were like, "Well, he was born in Cardiff. He was born in Cardiff." I was like, "Yeah, well, you were born in Germany, but you don't speak German, and no German would consider you German, and you don't consider yourself German." So.
Yeah, absolutely true, mate. That's my view. There is no such thing as magic soil. You are the progeny of your parents, basically.
Yeah. Just to clarify, anyone listening back, I wasn't born in Israel. I mean, before anyone.
I don't know. I think I need to see some birth certificates before we can.
Yeah, we're not going to allow you on this stream anymore, eh? Deeply suspicious.
It turns out I'm from the House of Benjamin.
It's like the Duke of Wellington said about the Irish. You know, the Duke of Wellington was born in Ireland, but he wasn't Irish. And the Duke of Wellington said, "Look, if I was born in a stable, it wouldn't make me a horse." You know, it's true.
I mean, Iron Duke. It's funny that you say that because I have heard, I have watched, like, I think on YouTube Shorts, an Irish girl referred to the Duke of Wellington as an Irishman.
I don't think he would have got very far with the actual Arthur, Duke of Wellington. And like I said earlier, just in case people are listening to this and thinking, "Oh, Iron Duke is very anti-Irish." No, I'm not. My mother was born in Southern Ireland, all right? My mother was born in Tipperary, you know, the song, "Long Way from Tipperary." So I'm not anti-Irish at all, but the Duke of Wellington was an Englishman who was born in Ireland, basically, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like someone said in chat, would a leftist call a Polish girl born in Tokyo Japanese? They would, actually. You can see this, like, if you ask them about the Rudyard Kipling analogy, people will say to them, "Oh, you know, do you consider Rudyard Kipling Indian?" You have to explain to them who Rudyard Kipling is first half the time, which is fucking embarrassing. But they will just turn around and say yes. That, you know, you can't ask these people those open-ended questions. You have to,
because they're dimwits. They're dimwits and midwits and just don't get it.
I mean, but it's like going back to the Roman stuff. I mean, a lot of. I mean, Mary Beard is the worst offender of this. She's the one that's indoctrinated. She's indoctrinated a generation of midwits into believing that the Roman Empire was this multicultural, wonderful thing, and whenever I've had like, any of those sorts of people wander into your comment section, you know, it's always the same thing. Oh, what do you mean? The multiculturalism does work because the Roman Empire was multicultural. Okay, so, they're so multicultural. What happened to the Druid culture? Yeah, what happened to the Druids in Anglesey? Oh,
didn't work so well, did it?
There you go. Well, what about the Druids in Gaul? Oh yeah, okay. Well, there you go. Now shut the hell up. It's basically what happened to the Carthaginians? What happened to the Carthaginians?
Didn't do well either, if I remember
rightly. What happened to the Carthaginian religion? Yeah, all the Etruscans. It's like, shut the hell up.
See, the really interesting thing about that, though, with Mary Beard is if you read her big book on the Roman Empire, she ends it in, I believe she considers the Roman Empire. She doesn't explain her reasoning, but she considers the Roman Empire ended in, I believe it's 212 AD. Was it the
Yeah.
was it the Antonine Constitution where they expanded Roman citizenship to everyone within the empire? And it's just
that was oh, hang on, let me think. That was what's his name's son? I'm trying to remember now. The emperor who they try and claim was black, which he definitely was not.
Septimius
but
Severus.
Severus.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, but
Thank
I'm
you,
not
Mitch.
talking about that though. I'm talking about specifically she ends
his
it with
son was a very unpopular emperor who didn't last long, was killed by some of his own guys.
Right,
He was the one who did that. And the reason he did it was to make the tax base bigger. That's why he did it. Only that.
But he ends the book there. She considers that the end of the Roman Empire, when Imperium, as to take it in the sort of Latin context, being supremacy over or supreme over, when Romans did not have special privileges within the Roman Empire, she considers the empire over, and yet she wouldn't make the same argument for Britain today. It's very bizarre. You do get that with a lot of historians.
She also doesn't think the Roman army was all that important, though.
Well, yeah, sure, but you do get this with a lot of historians where they're overtly leftist, but through their historical analysis, they sort of look at certain aspects accurately and therefore in a right-wing lens. It's very bizarre. I can't stand
it. And also, she doesn't.
I would only.
Sorry, someone.
I would just say, guys, that I would, if you want to watch stuff about Rome, go and check out Adrian Goldsworthy, who I think is by far the best modern historian on the Romans, and he doesn't have these lefty biases either. So yeah, go and check out Adrian Goldsworthy. He has an excellent YouTube channel as well, by the way.
Yeah, he's very good. I got his book actually. It's like The Lion and the Eagle, and it's a Rome's relationship.
Oh, the one on Rome and Persia, yeah.
Persia, yeah. And it's great because he covers Rome and Parthia, Rome and the Sassanids, and also Rome and the Islamic, the sort of a bit of the Islamic Persian, the Persian states in the. So the that and everything, and it's very detailed. It's really detailed, very good.
Yeah, he's very good. He also wrote Colossus, which is his biography of Julius Caesar, and before that, long before that, which is how I first came to know his work, he wrote The Roman Army at War, which is like one of the few ancient. One of the few modern looks at ancient military history. So yeah, definitely recommend Adrian Goldsworthy. He's a good dude, and not a lefty.
I think he also did. It was a book on Philip and Alexander, Philip and Alexander the Great, and the Macedonian army.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
I've got that somewhere.
And he also writes novels, and the novels are set in the Napoleonic Wars, but they're specifically the British Army in the Peninsula. So like Wellington's soldiers, they're based on Wellington's soldiers and junior officers, stuff like that. And they're pretty good. I've read about 3 of them. They're not bad at all. Nowhere near as well known as the Sharp books by Bernard Cornwell, but actually I think they're a bit more accurate. So again, I recommend Adrian Goldsworthy for his books as well on the Peninsular War in Spain, when the British Army basically beat every French army sent against them, and Wellington beat every French marshal sent against him, which I think is kind of cool, actually. But yeah,
we need a TV show of Titus. When he was a general, God, could you? I remember there was a mod on Steam for like Rome Total War. There was a mod of that, and I remember doing the multiplayer on that. That was insane. I mean, crazy stuff was said.
Yeah, I've seen You know
Yeah,
that
go on,
scene
Mitch.
from The Sopranos where that Jewish fellow's like, "Oh, where's the Romans now?" We need to recreate that scene, but it's just going to be the Masuda. Is it the Masuda or Masada?
Masada, I think.
Masada, yeah.
Yeah, we need to get that guy to be the commander of the Masada.
There was, of course, a TV series, mini series that did have Masada in it, but of course the Romans were very much the bad guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, God's chosen people were the true victims that day.
It fully supported the terrorists and was anti the Romans.
The future Titus series just needs to end with like a post-credit epilogue of just some Goldstein just just giving his middle finger to the arch.
Yeah.
Oh, which one was it? One of those Weinstein brothers, or whatever his name was. I can't remember. He actually flipped off an Arch of Titus in Rome.
Yeah, lots of them
that's
do that. There's a
right.
whole genre of tweets like that. It's the fucking like the several thousand year blood feud is still strong in there.
And what's funny is
crazy.
during the siege of Jerusalem, there's also like what was it? You've got I remember seeing a few years ago there was blame. There was like there was blame at the early Christians because they refused to get involved, and it was something to do with like the Bishop of Alexandria later, like a few hundred years later, who basically said, yeah, they were cursed and exiled or something like that. You know, just repeated cursed and exiled. That's something I've seen. And there was a documentary TV show once, and it was like, yeah, the Christians betrayed us, and that's what severed. That's what severed the Christian and Jewish faith into two. And I've always been a bit sus about that.
Before I bring Mitch into this discussion, because he hasn't said anything for a while, I would just like to say everyone here really supports the nation of Israel. We do.
I don't.
And we don't care how many women and children they kill in Palestine, because they kill those women and children in Palestine peacefully, of course. And if they want to start a bigger war in Lebanon, we support the nation of Israel. I just want to
I'm Duke. I just want to say I don't, but I support the Ellis Island Coalition. I also support the Hollywood division as well. I support that group. I'm a liberal. I'm a liberal pacifist. So yeah, I support the Ellis Island lot.
I support Israelis as far as them bombing brown people, but beyond that, I don't care. Beyond that, they can get
I am such a pacifist that when I was in the army for 12 years, I only ever carried planes. I would only ever carry planes. I'm a complete pacifist, guys. Mitch, you haven't said much for a while. What do you think about all this stuff we've been talking about?
Well, I mean, chat's talking about Total War games. I mean, I was a big fan of Napoleon Total War, and I don't know for whatever reason.
Great game.
I don't know why for whatever reason, but I tried to watch a Napoleon film earlier by Ridley Scott. I didn't even make it past 10 minutes. Well,
I haven't even
scratch out more than 5 minutes.
I haven't even seen it because I've heard people I like who hate it.
Yep, the first scene alone is just mind-bogglingly inaccurate. Like trying to say that Napoleon was present at the execution of Marie Antoinette when he wasn't. That he was at the siege of Toulon. No. So
the only significant moment of the terror that he was present in was in Paris was when the Jacobins stormed the army barracks and murdered a whole bunch of army officers and soldiers. I forgot in Paris. I forgot what it was called.
AI, and also when he did the whiff of grape shot against the royalists, of course.
Yeah,
13th Vendemiaire, I think that was called.
Yeah, but the one where he witnessed like the Jacobins storm the barracks and then sort of just begin murder. There was a letter. I remember reading it in this. It was a very detailed book actually on Napoleon. It's quite a good one I got somewhere. One because they were at I think it was having dinner or something, and he sort of berated the. He said that because this is the thing, he was a Jacobin himself, and he was big on the revolution. He just didn't like the mob populist aspect of it, but he agreed with all
Yeah,
the
he was a
sentiments of it.
total Jacobin.
Yeah.
Napoleon was a total Jacobin. In fact, when the Jacobins fell, Napoleon was fairly lucky not to be dragged into it, to be honest.
Well, he was arrested. He was arrested in, I think it was either Marseille or Nice, and because he left the capital like a week before. It all went down when Robespierre and others were arrested, and removed from power and executed. And while he was in prison, he basically betrayed. What was it Augustus? Or was it Octavian? Who was his younger brother? Robespierre's younger brother. Was it Augustus Robespierre or Octavian Robespierre? I can't remember the name now of the younger one. But he basically just betrayed the Robespierre family, who were very friendly to him, like and big supporters of him. And he said like in like to the like court or something, if I had known they were enemies of the revolution, I would have cut them down with my own sword. And all that sort of stuff,
even Josephine was a cast-off mistress of one of the guys who was higher up than Napoleon during the lefty revolution, which was the French Revolution.
Yeah, Ballard.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reminding me. But yeah, like, all right, I'm going to change the subject slightly. Did any of you guys ever watch that awful Bias Broadcasting Corporation series, Rogue Heroes, about the founding of the SAS, the Special Air Service?
People in my office keep telling me to watch this. Because
I read the book. I tried, Armin. I tried.
Yeah.
What's your opinion, guys? Go carry on. I'm going to give you mine when you're finished.
Is that the one from a few years ago?
Yeah, it was, and it's supposedly the founding of the British SAS by David Sterling in World War II.
I remember I recorded it, and I think my dad watched it, and he was like, he told me, "Oh no, it's a load of bollocks. All of it's just a load of made up bollocks." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I didn't watch it in the end because I was like, because I saw like the first few minutes, and I saw like your diversity hire, and I saw like, oh yeah, we're gonna punch the Nazis. We're gonna punch Nazis, and I was like, oh okay, I see what this is, and just switched it off.
Yep, that's a reasonable view. Mitch, what do you think of that show? If you've seen it, of course.
I ain't watched it, so I don't know.
Good, mate. You're good judgment. Adam?
No, I haven't seen it. I think I read the book, but I haven't seen the show.
Well, I tried to watch this show last week, and I got, I don't know, about halfway into episode 4. There were 6 episodes, I think. I got about halfway into episode 4, and like, because I was going to smash my computer, I stopped. And as AI's correctly said, because it was made by the Bias Brainwashing Corporation, they put so much diversity into 1941. You know, like there are black RAF pilots, and there are black women soldiers wandering around. All nonsense, of course. They just weren't in the Middle East at all. But, you know, they make out that Paddy Mayne was a complete lunatic. And all right, I've got to tell you, Paddy Mayne was a bit of a lunatic, but he was nowhere near as bad as he's shown in that TV series. And they also make out that David Sterling himself had all these grandiose ideas, and I've seen no evidence for that in the stuff I've read about David Sterling at all, to be honest. But yeah, they claim this, that, and the other. There's a Algerian woman who's supposed to be the deputy head of the Free French Intelligence Service, who I'm not sure is a real character at all. There's a transvestite British intelligence bloke who I don't think really existed as a transvestite, you understand? I don't think he was ever on an academic agent stream, so I doubt it. But but it's like I just watched it. These are genuine, real Anglo-Celtic British heroes, and they're just traduced and bastardized by that series. And I just hated it. Like I said, I was really bored, I got to say, lads. But I got to about, 2/3 of the way into episode 4, and I thought, I'm not watching this anymore, because it's just there were so many factual errors as well. Like there were jeeps in the desert in 1941, which they weren't, because strange to say, the Americans hadn't joined the war yet. The SAS do their first parachute jump from Dakotas C-47s, which the British didn't have in 1941 because, the Americans weren't in the war in 1941. But yeah, there's all sorts of shit in that. I hated it. I really did.
Wanted to see.
Carry
can you hear
on,
me?
guys. I've stopped.
Yeah.
I've stopped. You carry on.
Yeah. Apparently, I went on the Wikipedia and looked at like the reception of it. Apparently, there was meant to be like a love interest between David Sterling and the French Algerian lady.
Well, there might have been a sex interest. I don't know about a love interest. I think that might be going too large, but it's just me.
Yeah. Well, the Bedouin, the Berber women. It's in the desert. There's not much going on around you. You're frustrated.
I don't know, mate. I spent years in Africa, middle of nowhere, and African girls didn't attract me when I started, and they didn't attract me when I finished. But that's just me. That's just me.
I don't know. I think I could.
Guy.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to do it for base reasons.
I don't know. I always like cute blonde girls with quite big tits, but that's just me. It's just me.
I guess it would be like I thinking about it. I could only do. It'd only be Ethiopian, so I don't think I could stretch further than that, to be honest.
God.
I never went for African girls. I lived there for ages.
Yeah.
I have to put this on the screen, by the way. Hang on, wrong one. There you go. That's my friend Aubrey who's saying that. And by the way, Aubrey is a cute blonde girl, so whatever.
Walked into the worst moment on stream. Actually, talking about things, Asian girls, like particularly like Chinese, Japanese, never done it for me. I don't know why. I just don't, don't find them attractive.
Are very pretty, mate. I must say,
I don't
some
know.
of them are very pretty, but yeah, that's just me. Like if someone, if like one of our crowd has a Japanese or Taiwanese girlfriend, I'm not going to hold that against them. I'm really not.
I can.
Well, you can do what you like, mate. Obviously, everyone can do what they like, but me, I won't, because I think that's a bit different.
Andrew, I'm gonna have to head off now. So thanks for having me on briefly for this stream. Just gonna send on a final note, two arms every. And I'm joking. On a final note, though, I would say I was going to say I don't really know what to say at the moment. I think just stand by and stand ready. I guess if you're, on all this,
absolutely.
we stand by, stand ready. It's
Mitch, could I? Sorry, AI. Could I? Before you go, you have an excellent series on your channel. Would you like to give it a plug about the British Empire?
Yeah. So, me and Connor, aka Plotlines, are we've done this long, chapter by chapter review of Richard Hilton, Major Richard Hilton, book on the mysterious death of the British Empire. It's a very, very detailed book of the history of the British Empire, and then from his point in the 1930s, where he starts noticing a rapid decline into basically managerial. What he is describing is managerialism that you saw in FDR's America, Stalin's Russia, and of course the mid-century German. That sort of managerialism there, and he saw, and what it done is effectively it turned all the goodwill and the aristocratical nature of connection that the British had with its vassals and subjects around the empire, and basically turned it on its head. And the people administering the empire were just greedy, corrupt scumbags who had no connection, and just viewed the empire as a way to plunder and build up a career for themselves. And there was no sense of
bullshit, which was utter bullshit. That was not the way anyone in the British Empire ever looked at it. But yeah, okay.
No, and it was mainly in the the civil service and the not the military. I mean, as Richard Hilton did point out, the military remained remarkably, even into the Second World War, free of that. In places like India and stuff, remained free of that sort of corruption. But what it had done is effectively it betrayed all aspects of the British Empire and its subjects. And this is looking at what
book.
It is an excellent book.
It's an excellent book. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and we've covered. So the last chapter we covered, like the factors that happened within Britain that caused its collapse, and now the next chapter is going to be looking at exterior factors. In particular, he talks about what happened post-war in British Palestine, who was backing various paramilitary groups there.
Does he AI? Does he mention that future prime ministers and presidents of Israel were complicit in hanging British NCOs who they caught?
He does mention. He mentions the hotel bombing. He also
the
mentions
King David Hotel bombing,
where
where they killed quite a lot of British women and children.
Yeah. And also he mentions a lot where they got a lot of support from, and part of the themes from the book, like Adam Curtis's Ocean Apart series, is it does show on a number of occasions America and Russia tag teaming up against the remnants of the British Empire, and that's something that he's very, of course he's against Soviet Union, but he also has this very strong objection to America. And one interesting fact I did point, we will be pointing, is when he looks at the culture side of American influence post-war, he actually pulls an Eveler sort of statement. I don't know if he ever knew of Eveler or if they knew of each other. I doubt it, to be honest. But he does talk about how like jazz music started, like American music started infecting the airwaves, and there's Eveler did an essay about that as well in Italy.
To be
And
fair, jazz music was American black music rather than white music. But yeah, I mean, look, let's be clear about this. When we say American, we mean the American government and the deep state and their, the people who ran the country. Not average Americans. Average Americans didn't give a shit about any of that stuff.
Yeah, and Katie Lane in the chat says, "What about the East India Company?" We did cover that in the book, and again,
I
the
did,
East
I
India
did an
Company.
episode with you, and we did cover that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, just to point out, when we covered that episode, the people in the East India Company learned the Machiavellian machination politics of the Indian subcontinent from the local Indians. So that's where because they had to, because that's what they were playing with. Anyway, I'm going to have to go now. So thank you.
Hang
for
on,
having
mate.
me on.
One more thing. Someone is asking in the chat, what is your YouTube channel called? Please tell people.
It's AI Shiatori. If you type in AI Shiatori, you'll find all my videos. You'll probably find my most popular one, which is a stream I did with Apostolic Majesty on Skyrim, and that will be up there front and center.
Yep, do it, mate. Yeah, AI has got an excellent channel. Do go and subscribe to him. Yeah, thanks, AI, and thank you for joining us this evening.
No worries. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you next week.
See ya.
Thank
All
you.
right, guys. Yeah, Mitch, you haven't said all that much lately, so you carry on this conversation because we're going to go for at least another, I don't know, 40 minutes, I guess.
Cool.
What's your view, Mitch? What's happening? Blah, blah, blah.
I mean, in terms of, you got Stoke where you've got the Muslims arming themselves with machetes and the like. The police actually just let them through. They didn't get the right police there. When we got a police liaison officer, like only one guy with a megaphone, to tell them, if you have any weapons on you, discard them at your mosque.
So no police dogs, no guys with batons and riot shields or anything like that.
Nope. All we got was some bearded bloke. I don't know who he is. No name's been given him from anything. But
so two-tier policing, in other words.
I mean, it's not even like two tiers. It's just like the only tier there is just protect the minorities and fuck everyone who's got white skin.
Yeah.
Basically, like that's.
Imagine
that gets me about all this is
being trained. Imagine British policemen being trained that if you're an Anglo-Celtic white guy, you're the enemy.
This is what gets me like how the police have just doubled down on their already terrible reputation. Like, you think, given their fear of being held to the fire, they might actually start acting, like, might start behaving when the spotlight's upon them, in terms of our point of view as the people who pay their taxes. I mean, people who pay our taxes for their wages, and they just double down on it. But they just stuck the knife in even further by beating down on a lot of white lads, or permitting Muslim hit squads to throw bricks at guys' heads. Like in apparently in Hull, for example, there was a Muslim who tried to run over a lot of these white guys. Fortunately, he was stopped and they threw bricks at his windshield.
No one was hurt. Mitch's Hull bad for that now?
I don't know. I've never been. I can't remember the last time I was in Hull. I must have been like if I've ever been there, I don't remember it. So
I'm
would
just
talk
trying
to
because
others.
like I've been to Hull. I went to Hull in the late 1980s, and it was a lovely town. It was like really very Anglo-Celtic and English. When I went there, it was a nice town. There was not a lot of diversity, you know. I mean, it
Yeah,
had lost a lot of its fishing industry, but it was still a nice place, you know.
yeah. From what I've heard up there, it's apparently there's like a few shoe shops and whatnot that have been burnt down and whatnot over in Hull. Whereas in areas
Uh-huh.
like Stoke, for example, you just got the guys getting like protesting and then getting hit by bricks or machetes. In Newcastle, there was a bunch of young lads, like younger than me, who were getting into scraps with Muslims. So up in the northeast, like Newcastle way, there's a lot of based young lads below the age of 20, by the looks of it.
Jesus.
Right.
Yeah, it's not good, man. It's not good. I mean, like I said, when I went to Hull, which was many years ago, late 1980s, it was a quite cool English town. They'd lost a lot of their fishing industry, but that was mostly due to joining the EU, which I was never in favour of myself. One reason I like Nigel Farage is that he won the Brexit vote, and I know some of you younger lads say that was pointless. I actually don't think it was.
Well, Hull's not improved, has it?
If Nigel Farage can become prime minister, but we'll see.
Well, he's shown a complete lack of leadership amidst all these riots, so he's not going to do much.
I don't know, mate. I think he's probably watching to see what happens. I think his power levels are a bit higher than some of us
Mhm.
think. But Adamant, what's your view? I think Farage is boxing clever at the moment, but what do you think?
No, I think his power levels have topped out. He was always going to have a limit. I mean, I've always said that there will be people who form roles of leadership within our side of things, but we'll leave them by the wayside with time because there's only so far they will go, and then you need to find the next guy and the next guy. And
Yeah.
Farage is still being quite useful as far as we've gone, and may still be useful down the road. But I don't know. I'm not really sure if it's just boxing clever. Like, he could have come out pretty strong, like Richard Tice did on the airport thing, but they've actually all just kind of cucked a little bit on this.
Yeah, I think they're nervous about it, mate. I mean, they're mainstream political people, and I think they're nervous about it. I'm nervous about it because obviously this channel is totally peaceful, and I have to keep saying that. Which I reckon, if you're Nigel Farage, is even more important because I'm a nobody who no one's ever heard of and hardly anyone's ever listened to. But if you're Nigel Farage, you've got to be more careful about that. So I'm a little bit, maybe a little bit less critical of Farage than you are in this particular instance. But, that's just me. But yeah, I don't know. I like to think that the Anglo-Celtic, real indigenous British population have just about had enough. And if that's true, and I totally agree with all the stuff about revolutions are always top down and blah, 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 blah. But you know what? To do one of these things, You do have to have a population that will follow you. You do.
With the whole elite theory, it's always showed by that brown academic who, I think he's just got massive egg on his face and always because, I mean, because that brown academic, I mean, he can do thousands and thousands of hours worth of substacks and streams on YouTube, but 150 white lads in Southport did more to scare Starmer than AA could in 1,000 years. So
Mitch,
that's why AA is
what I said
against the riots.
Mitch, you know what I said to him under the video he put on X on Twitter? I said, like, mass immigration has to stop and remigration is inevitable. So,
I mean, the thing is like, putting that guy aside for now. I mean, there are some things in which I think some of those guys sort of maybe misunderstand is too optimistic, but obviously, like, there's sides of elite theory that they seem to leave to one side. But of course, the thing there is that if you actually build a proper vanguard, the thing is, as fun as it's been to watch these protests go on, and as much as I've had a bit of a wry smile to see the police retreat or the state, they lit up the House of Commons in pink. They lit up the House of Commons whatever. They lit up the House of Commons in pink to like, after doing like Starmer's really, really stupid gay speech. They then come out and they're like, oh, actually, no, we are listening. Solidarity, light up the House of Commons, as if anyone gives a damn. But of course, they'll put a lot of this, that they will put these people away, and they'll put the protests away in time, and we'll be left with some minor wins, which is like, we've made the state show its hand to more people, and we've also shown them that actually, they were right to probably fear us all along, which is quite powerful. But it will come at great cost, which is that they will punish and lock away a lot of these people, and they will work really hard to make sure that these sorts of towns never do this sort of thing again. I mean, you remember Dagenham? Dagenham was probably the closest place to electing a BNP MP, and they literally blacked that town up. Over the course of 10 years, the demographic change there was probably the most astounding of anywhere it's been in the country.
Yeah, but Armin, one thing I would say to you is this: that one of the things that I'm really, really, really scared of is that if white, Indigenous British, Anglo-Celtic people start to regard themselves as a group and to support each other, they're fucked.
But this is where the elite theory does come in, because you do need like the Dave the Distributist. I kind of think you can't make this point anymore because people get so sensitive about this subject.
Yeah.
But Dave the Distributist once made the point that Israel is the ultimate parallel society because it has representatives in every Western nation's sort of, some of them are sort of explicit and some of them are implicit, but it has representatives in every hall of power in every major Western power, primarily Britain and America.
Adam, how many standing ovations did Netanyahu get in the American Congress? I think it was 58, which is like faintly ridiculous, to be honest, but all right.
And it's like, for them for so many people in America to be like kind of against Israel from a sort of anti-Zionist perspective, and yet Israel can still, essentially fleece America for everything that it needs. You need representatives in power, and at some extent, like some of the same people who bang on about their elite theory will then turn around and go, "Oh, there's no political solution." And it's like, well, by matter of course, every solution is going to be political.
Yeah, but
you're
Adam,
gonna
if
have.
there's no political solution, we might just as well all commit suicide. You know.
Well, yeah, it might as well. I mean, that is kind of what, like, I think Julius Evola makes the point of at some point.
But it's
But
like crazy and insane and not
yeah.
right. So, like a British population, which is way over 80% of the population, should just all commit suicide.
Well, the thing is that, like, it's, even if you don't think there is actually a specific political solution, politics is going to form part of the journey to a solution.
Yeah.
You kind of do, to an extent, need some populist guys in there that are going to defend you.
Yeah, you need
when,
people like Farage, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's not fulfilling that role at the moment. In this instance, he's not. He may do it other times, and I hope he does. But in this specific instance, he isn't. But you do also
Then we
need
to trace him. We need to trace him.
But you need something. You need something that kind of transcends just populist guys, though.
Yep.
You do need, like you know, another interesting thing that came up, and we're so far away from doing anything like this, is having voter consortiums whereby you essentially give your vote to a group who votes on your behalf, and they will select all the candidates for all the small, you know, elections that you can't. You just don't have the mental energy to, and other such things. And to an extent, that does happen in Britain already. But it's done by like Muslims.
Yep. That makes sense.
You know, it's they will apply for a bunch of postal votes for all sorts of people, and then you'll have like essentially a guy will come and collect the postal votes and fill them in on your behalf and post them all.
So all the women and daughters and what have you will all vote for the Imam.
Well, funny enough, I mean, that's J.D. Vance's policy, isn't it, in America? That's what he wants, but it's just done by Muslims here in Britain.
No surprise.
So, I mean, I have a lot of room for elite theory. I've read a lot of it, and I do like it. But
there's definitely
I think a lot of people.
To it. There is
but I think, especially in the DR, when there is such an enormous battle of egos, I think there's quite a lot of people that talk about it that are literally no better than the slop accounts they criticize.
100%.
They use it as a way of like producing clickbait.
I don't know what you think, Alma, but in my opinion, anyone on the DR who is promoting trannies and homosexual tranny lovers, I just don't get it. It makes us look ridiculous, in my opinion. It makes us look ridiculous.
Yeah, and the sort of like, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say we can just vote our way out of it. I think voting is important, but I think it's more complicated than that. But like Geralt of Rivia just said in chat, was at an agricultural show in Devon last week. It was so beautiful, so non-diverse. I went out. I'd been talking to Raw Biscuits in chat, and he was complaining about outdoorsy stuff up in Essex and how crummy it is because of how built up it is. And I was like, it's not that bad, blah, blah, blah. Stop whining. And then I go out for a ride on my bicycle today for 2 hours. And I ride out to this pub, and I'm passing all these people, these families, these white families walking along the country lanes there. And I ride through through this area where it's all open wheat fields, and there's a fucking Spitfire flying overhead. And it's like, Britain is so far from over, it's unreal, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
It's like even in all these shithole towns, you can go literally 5 minutes outside, and it's not over. You can see that so plainly, you know. So, the political system, it's a complicated one, and it's not something where you can just show up and put a vote down and be like, well, hey, go aim opinion box on our way to victory. But like, people should probably look at these marches, and I know people want to look at them and be like, oh, you know, what's the government going to do next? How bad is this going to come back on us? But what they should just look at look at these groups and see essentially
some people fighting back.
Well, essentially, a bunch of just local people, gammons, if you will.
Yeah.
Not exactly any high class network going on, but
they're not
just
Gammons.
Anglos.
They're Anglo Celts.
Yeah, I like embracing the slur gammon. I think it's
Oh, come on, Armin. They were the guys who, in the old days, when people feared the British
Yeah.
Empire, who
and they
were our
still do.
soldiers.
That's
or
why
our
they attempt to
sailors.
call them gammons, because
Yeah.
they're trying to take something that actually deep down they do fear, and they're
Yep.
trying to put a
Yep.
slur or
Yep.
a mockery to it. In the same way that Cavalier was meant to be a slur against the Royalists,
Yep.
and they embraced it, and now Cavalier is a term of endearment.
Yeah,
Gammon's probably never going to be a term of
Cavalier in the
endearment,
English
but you
Civil
know,
War. Yep.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, and Gammon's probably never going to be quite a term of endearment, but I'll take it. You know, I'll embrace that name. They can get.
They're
fucked if
not
they think it's a
Gammons,
slur.
though, Armin. They're the guys who would have been the backbone.
Sure,
of
whatever.
the
They're colour
18th
sergeant
and 19th
physiognomy, we'll
century
say.
British armies.
Yeah,
Or
sure.
the Royal Navy,
Okay. Yeah, colour sergeant physiognomy, we'll call it. Middle Englanders, you could say.
Yeah, the people who would have beat the enemy outnumbered more than 10 to 1.
Yeah. Yeah, and they can go on a Facebook or a WhatsApp group, and they can show up in town, literally in the fucking hundreds if you look at some of these places. And they can cause absolute mayhem on a dime. And you know, there's literally like 50 million of us.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, 5 million of those are dysgenic freak leftists, but there's
rest
still
are
45
okay.
million of us. Yeah.
Yeah, the rest are okay. I totally agree.
I mean, the regime will look at that, and they when they say EDL, when they say far right fucks, when they say far right,
Yeah,
full
they're
stop,
scared.
they're
scared.
Yeah,
when
what
they
they're
say
trying
that.
to do, what they're trying to convince is themselves. They're trying to convince themselves that this is a small minority, a fringe group.
Yeah, it's not really
and it
England.
is.
It's not really England. It's not really Britain, and they're lying to themselves.
Yeah. And to an extent, yeah, they are a minority, but it's a minority out of a greater majority that persists, and
I think it's
will continue to feel
Adam,
something.
I don't know if you'd agree, but I think it's a real and pretty big majority that the mainstream media just totally ignores. That's what I think.
Yeah, but yeah,
and as someone said earlier, people riot because they're ignored. And that's true. And I think the real truth is most British people, like your average, ordinary, normie British people, most of them are more closely related to those people who are trying to fight back than they are to the middle class wankers who run the mainstream media. That's what I think, anyway.
Yeah, but yeah, so I mean, the protest will probably come with some pain further down the road. We'll have to pay for it somewhere or another, but it's happened.
Oh, yeah.
We shouldn't really cuck people's righteous fury or anger at what's happened. I like controversial opinion, i.e. not controversial at all. I don't want to live in a country where people don't riot when young children are stabbed.
Yeah, 3 little girls murdered. People should riot for that. Totally right.
Yeah. I mean, I remember one particular tweet
peacefully,
exchange.
Of course, you should.
I remember a tweet exchange when that young guy was killed for trying to run over the police in France. That young, I think he was like Algerian or some such. And you know, all the typical brigade that we're hearing from now said about how horrific it is. These protests were coming out and saying, oh, you know, I remember one specifically being like, if my son was killed, I'd want the whole country to burn. And someone just went back and was like, yeah, but when it's white kids, you don't look back in anger. Yeah, we get it.
No.
And yeah, ultimately, yeah, that's kind of true. When our children are killed in the streets, people should be angry. and that's a natural response.
I've
and it's
got
something we
to
probably
tell
shouldn't
you,
rail
Alan,
against.
I've got to tell you, when I was in the British Army, like post 1983, so a very long time ago,
Mm.
we would have gone ape shit if 3 little girls had been stabbed by some bastard from Rwanda. I'm sorry, we would have. We wouldn't have liked it at all.
Yeah.
And I've got to say that it's just true. I'm sorry, it is just true. And anyone who doesn't realize that is a moron. Mitch,
Yeah.
your thoughts on what we've been talking about? You're muted, mate.
He's probably BRB.
Oh, hang on. There is a private chat message I can look at. Wait a minute. I'll check it. I'm doing my boom attack. Yeah, he's coming back in a sec. All right.
Someone said, "Why do you think AA is sorry? What's that?" Cast Iron says, "Why do you think AA is really afraid of the riots?" I mean, I don't think his criticism of the riots was totally misplaced. He is right about the disinfo and the stop accounts. We really need to do something about those guys, like Ian Miles Chong and those types. Just
I hate
so
those
much
people.
crap.
Yeah, I hate those people. Yeah,
because the thing is as well, they are. I mean, he talks about containment, right? But they are containment because they keep people contained in this thing where they're directing their anger towards like Muslims, and it's like, okay, yeah, Muslims are a big problem in the UK.
They are aliens, yes.
Yeah, but they're not the only problem, and people need to stop thinking in this religious faith and cultural angle and start thinking in a more ethnos-based angle. And thinking of themselves in the same way too. And these accounts obviously stop people from doing that.
Yep, totally agree with that. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I have to say, I have noticed in recent times that AI has become a bit more pro-Muslim than it used to be. Maybe.
Yeah. Funny enough, I actually came across a lefty in real life who knew him as from when he was working at a university.
Yep.
And they were like trying to claim, they were like, oh, he's racist. And this was back in his like libertarian days. And they were like, oh, he's racist. He went on some rant in a lecture room about Muslims. And I thought, well, to be fair, this person was an idiot and a leftist. So I imagine they're probably overblowing it quite a lot. But compare that to today, and he is a bit more because he has said this a few times before, as do others. Edward Dutton, I like the guy. I've read some of his books. I went and listened to one of his talks in real life. But he also does this. He does the whole thing where he's like, oh, we should be aligning with, the Malcolm X, black guys because they want the same thing, which is a segregated society. And it's like, no, they don't. Malcolm X went to Smethick when they had that famous leaflet back in the day.
Yep.
Had his photo taken outside of Smethick, and it's like, why? That was black people encroaching on a white community. If he was pro keeping the two groups separate and not actually just pro black supremacy, then like why would he do that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Malcolm X was mainly black supremacy for the most part. But, yeah. But yeah, no, I don't disagree with anything you say there. Like I said, I have noticed in recent times a more pro-Muslim view from AA, shall we say. Well, and I'm not especially anti-Muslim. I mean, if Muslims want to be Muslims in Muslim countries, go for it. I don't give a shit, really. But Britain's not a Muslim country and shouldn't be. And that is one of the problems. Your people will say counter jihad. And I see where they're coming from in that sense. But I absolutely do see where they're coming from in that sense. But you know what? As an Englishman, you kind of have to be a bit counter jihad, you know.
Yeah. Well, the thing is as well, like all of that stuff has a lot of leftist undertones. And I suppose if I'm to be open-minded, I should say that by itself doesn't mean anything, but they're also just wrong. Like there's a thing that was said on the Duran that was actually by this academic. But obviously the Duran guys were echoing this too, where they were talking about like the post 9/11 era, you know, the Islamophobia of the post 9/11 era, and how that and the counter jihad was used to. And I brought this up a few episodes ago, and I said about like the film Sum of All Fears, and someone pointed out to me afterwards that actually it wasn't just that maybe like Sum of All Fears had decided to be to like take the Muslims out of the story when they turned it into a film and instead made it Australian neo-Nazis. Apparently they were literally approached by an NGO that was working on behalf of the US government that requested that they do those write-ins, and that was post 9/11. You know, and of course during that time the
neo-Nazis are the big fear of the whole wide world.
Funny enough, they get a lot of mention outside of Australia. I think more than a lot of Australians probably realise.
Oh, listen, they get a lot of mention in Australia, and they're the tiniest group you've ever seen in your entire life. Have no power whatsoever. And like
that said, that guy, what is it, Thomas Sewell? Is that his name?
Yeah.
He claims that they have more members now than the Australian police force in Victoria where they operate. You know, in the Australian police force of Victoria.
I wish that was not true, but it's not. I wish.
I was wondering because that's a lot of
in a peaceful fashion, of course. But no, I wish it was, but there's a lot of Australian Victorian cops. They get lied about constantly, you know.
Yeah.
Like they can go and do some camp out in the bush, and some gay Antifa guys can go try and take photographs of them, and then apparently they're evil because the gay Antifa guys piss themselves with fear and stuff like that. But
we had that here. The PA guys got featured in a Channel 4 Dispatches documentary, and then the guy who was an undercover journalist went out leafleting with them, and he got assaulted and beaten up by Antifa. And then they tried to make out as if this was like an example of far right violence.
Yep.
Despite literally showing the footage in full in the documentary.
Yeah, sounds pretty typical to me. They just lie constantly.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, those Australian guys who support that stuff, they basically go and do protests where they'll like fly banners that say things like pedophiles are bad. And you know what? Sorry, but pedophiles are bad. I don't want pedophiles around my children, you know.
I mean, the funny thing about that is obviously we've had this Hugh Edwards scandal here in Britain.
The
News at 10 BBC, and you're getting all these lefties coming out being like, oh, you claim to care about these girls getting stabbed, but I don't see you campaigning or protesting about like Hugh Edwards. And I'm like, you're not finding any BBC fans in that audience. Like,
no,
like, seriously.
Just a hypocrite who sat there trying to pretend he was a good guy when actually he was a pedophile who wanted to look at pictures of little tiny kids. I'm sorry, I'm not gonna even take any notice of that. It's just so ridiculous. And you know, there's a reason the BBC, the Biased Brainwashing Corporation, has that horrible pedophile sculpture on the front of their building. Don't think it's accidental myself. I don't think it's accidental.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to the AA thing, actually, just quickly, because I just saw something in chat, and it reminded me of that. I think to a large extent, some of these people in the DR, when they get hooked up on this stuff, they get caught out because they're not Christians. In fact, some of them are very Christian critical, which is fine. It's not, obviously, but it's these people aren't pagan either. I'm not trying to pick on those guys, but they that kind of leads them to get into this sort of analysis where they think that like Muslims can be sort of an anti-Zionist ally, when in reality the Jews just see Muslims as a more amicable group to live with than Christians. They see Christians as a bigger threat. Yeah, and you can see this in polling. There's polling that was done in America where it showed that, like, Ashkenazi Jews in Brooklyn absolutely hated evangelical Midwestern Protestants more than any other group by a sizable margin. Whereas actually evangelical Protestants liked Jews the most.
Which is kind of crazy. I mean, look, one of our weaknesses, as Anglo-Celtic European white guys, is that we're the least people in the whole wide world to like our own group. I think you would agree with that.
Yeah. Like I sometimes say to people on Twitter, it doesn't work so well in real life, but I'll say to people on Twitter when they say, "Oh, only one race, the human race," I'll just be like, "Yeah, not something funny. I can tell you're white just by that tweet."
Try that with the Zulu. Adamant, try that with the Zulus, right?
Yeah.
I knew a lot of Zulu guys. I even had a few Zulu mates. My soldiers were mostly Zulu or Zulu related. And they're the most racist bastards you're ever going to meet. You'll never meet anyone more racist than them. Yeah. They hate every other black group.
Yeah.
Like every other black group, never mind whites.
I mean, we've had a few like black people working at the place I work, not for long, but there are a few that often get in. And the white people there, my fellow Anglos in the office are always kind of spooked at how racist they are. Often racist to like other blacks. And it always I don't know, it sort of grinds up against the sort of the modern Europeans sort of universalist sort of framing for the world.
And also check out East Asians, all right? Check out East Asians, like the Japanese, the Chinese, all those guys. You'll never meet more racist guys than those, and I understand
Nepalese too, as well. The Nepalese can
absolutely
be very...
right. Yep, absolutely correct. But all of those guys, they hate all of the other East Asians. It's just a human thing, And we, as in Anglo-Celts, Anglo-Celtic white European people, British people, we need to get back to that. We really do. Everyone else has never lost it, but we did, sadly.
Yeah.
And partly from America, but, also partly from propaganda since 1945 on our own TV and mainstream media.
Yeah, and some of that was also just the European kind of losing some of their self-respect. Sort of a typical sort of end of history sort of arc going on there. But I mean, people always say that if you look at like the historical cycles, like Spenglerianism and that, it's fixed and you can't do anything about it. There are people, even some British historians, that argue that essentially the Anglo was so powerful they've broken history, and I think for that reason it can be revitalized. I don't think we should just say, we're doomed to live in this end cycle. I think
the one thing I would say to you, Armin, and before we finish, because we've gone a couple of hours now, is like I get really bored with certain Scandinavians and Germans going on about eternal Anglos, and even some Americans, which really gets my goat, going on about eternal Anglos. And I'm sorry, it wasn't true. If you went to England and Britain in the 18th and 19th century and you did something bad, you're probably going to get lynched. Right? That's what happened to most people who did.
The funny thing is, for
and
all that
even
talk about
people who didn't, even people who didn't like our average customs were deeply unpopular in Britain.
But even if, I mean, to talk about the Eternal Anglo, I mean, you were talking to AI earlier about his series on Colonel Hilton?
Yeah.
And it's like, there's actually quite a few of those sorts of guys, these post-Empire, post-World War II military higher-ups and even regular public intellectuals who were writing scathing criticisms about, like the JQ or Israel or immigration or just generally Africans or whatever, and you weren't seeing the same sort of thing coming out of America. Well, not to be too harsh, there were a few fringe figures in America, but it was definitely more commonplace here in Britain, even in some instances in the British mainstream, than than otherwise.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But it's just not true. It's nonsense, basically. I don't know how anyone who has even the slightest knowledge of history can really believe it, to be honest. But yeah, that's just me. I don't think we're going to get Mitch back by the looks of it. Any final thoughts, Adam?
No. Dak Gag says, was Ford a fringe figure? No. Luckily for them, they had a guy like him in there. But look at how they've ruined his legacy, and that's obviously a slightly different argument, but it's just awful to see what's become.
Yeah, he's one of the most evil men in American history now.
Yeah, and whilst they use his foundation to push all this stuff, that I looked the other day, like I think the Ford website when I last checked still had all the pride symbols up, and it's like, wasn't that a month ago?
Yeah, he would have vomited just to see it, I think. But yeah, no, I mean the original Henry Ford, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I have a whole theory which I can back up actually with sources. I should really put it into a big giant essay or a video about the likes of Disney, Ford, generally speaking, the late sort of captains of industry and how they were put away by FDR and the American regime.
Oh yeah. I mean, Disney. You look at what Disney used to do and what the Disney company does today, and the Disney company today spends the vast majority of its time trying to destroy white America, pretty much. But but just the way things go, I guess. But anyway, thank you very much, Adam, for joining us. Thank you very much to Mitch for joining us. And thank you very much for AI for joining us. I think it was a fairly interesting stream. I'm going
only
to
really one
finish
topic, but yeah,
it was. But also, I'd like to say to my friend Aubrey, who's been in the chat, R.I.P. Sir Jasper, the dog, one of the best dogs.
that's very sad.
One of the keenest brains in dogdom. But if anyone goes to heaven, dogs do, because they don't have anything bad about them, really. So I don't think there's much chance of me going to heaven, but I kind of think most all of my dogs will. So yeah, that's just what I think. So yeah, guys, thanks for joining us. I am going to try next week to get a pretty well-known Australian streamer on here to just talk about what YouTube did to his channel. But I don't know if he'll agree, but I am going to try. And then after that, we'll be back for Splendid Isolation number 184. So yeah,
Nice.
take care, guys. Thank you to my 3 guests, and don't let the bastards grind you down.
Yep, night all.